What happens when royalty meets reality television and everything goes wrong? In just 32 seconds, a friendly interview turned into one of the most shocking television moments of the year. This is the story of how Prince Harry got kicked off Kelly Clarkson's show after a heated clash that nobody saw coming. The studio audience was buzzing with excitement. Kelly Clarkson was preparing to welcome one of the most famous people in the world. Prince Harry was scheduled to talk about his latest charitable endeavors. The producers were thrilled. This was going to be ratings gold. Everyone expected a warm conversation about finding happiness and making a difference. What they got was something completely different. Kelly walked out onto the stage with her signature bright smile, waving to the crowd as they erupted in applause. She took her seat and glanced at her notes. The cameras were rolling. This was supposed to be easy, but something felt off the moment Prince Harry walked onto the stage. He entered with a dismissive wave. The audience cheered, but his expression remained cold. Kelly stood to greet him with a warm hug, but he barely returned it. He sat down heavily and immediately adjusted his position. Kelly noticed, but kept her smile bright. "Welcome, welcome. It's so great to have you here," Kelly said cheerfully. "How are you doing today?" Prince Harry leaned back and crossed his arms. "I'm all right, I suppose. It's quite warm in here, isn't it?" Kelly laughed lightly. "Oh, the studio lights can be intense. You'll get used to it in a minute. So, I know everyone is excited to hear about the work you've been doing with your foundation. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're focusing on right now?" He looked at her like she had asked the most obvious question in the world. "Well, Kelly, if people actually paid attention to what I do instead of what I say, they'd already know. But I suppose I can explain it again for those who don't bother to read." The audience shifted uncomfortably. Kelly's smile faltered for just a second before she recovered. "Well, we're all here to learn today. That's what this show is about. So please, share with us." Prince Harry sighed dramatically. "We're working on mental health initiatives, environmental causes, things that actually matter, not like the superficial entertainment that usually fills these time slots." Kelly's eyes widened slightly. She glanced at her producer off camera, who looked just as shocked as she felt. But Kelly was a professional. She had dealt with difficult guests before. She pressed on. "That's wonderful. Mental health is such an important topic, and I think a lot of people appreciate the work you're doing to bring awareness to it. I know you've spoken openly about your own struggles. That takes a lot of courage." "Courage?" He laughed bitterly. "It's not courage, Kelly. It's necessity. When you've been through what I've been through, when you've had your entire life picked apart by people who have no idea what it's like to live under that kind of pressure, you don't have a choice. You either speak up or you crumble. I chose to speak up. Not everyone is strong enough to do that." Kelly nodded slowly. "Absolutely. And I think that's what makes your voice so powerful. You've turned your pain into purpose. Have I?" He leaned forward, his tone sharp. "Or have I just been forced to perform my trauma for public consumption because that's what people want? Everyone wants to hear about the sad prince who lost his mother. Nobody wants to hear about the real issues. They just want the drama." The studio fell quiet. Kelly took a breath. "I understand that it can feel that way sometimes, but I think people genuinely care about the causes you're fighting for. That's why we wanted to have you here today." Prince Harry scoffed. "Right. You wanted me here for ratings. Let's not pretend this is about charity. This is about getting a big name on your show so people will watch. That's how this industry works." The audience gasped. Kelly's expression shifted from friendly to firm. "Actually, that's not how this show works. We invite guests because we think our audience will be inspired by their stories and the work they're doing. And yes, people want to watch because they're interested in you, but that's not a bad thing. That's called having a platform you've used quite effectively, I might add." He waved his hand dismissively. "A platform that was built on the backs of my family's suffering. A platform I never asked for." Kelly's jaw tightened. "You may not have asked for it, but you've certainly used it. You've written books, done interviews, signed production deals. So let's not act like you're a victim who's been dragged into the spotlight. You've made choices." The tension in the room was thick. Prince Harry's face turned red. "You have no idea what it's like to be in my position. You grew up normal. You had a choice about whether or not to be famous. I was born into this. Everything I do is scrutinized. Every word I say is twisted. And now you're sitting here judging me for trying to take control of my own narrative?" Kelly leaned forward, her voice steady but sharp. "I'm not judging you for taking control of your narrative. I'm pointing out that you can't have it both ways. You can't complain about being in the spotlight while actively seeking it out. You can't criticize the media while doing countless media appearances. And you certainly can't come onto my show and insult what I do while expecting me to just smile and nod." The audience erupted in applause. Prince Harry looked stunned. He clearly had not expected Kelly to push back. He had expected her to be another friendly interviewer who would let him say whatever he wanted without challenge. "Excuse me?" he said, his voice rising. "Are you seriously lecturing me right now?" "I'm not lecturing you," Kelly replied calmly. "I'm having a conversation, and in a conversation, both people get to speak. You've said a lot of things in the last few minutes that honestly feel pretty disrespectful, not just to me, but to this show, to our audience, and to the people who work really hard to make this happen every single day." Prince Harry stood up abruptly. "This is absurd. I came here to talk about important issues, and you're making this about your feelings." Kelly stood up as well. "No, you came here and immediately made it clear that you think you're above all of this. You insulted my show. You insulted the work we do. And when I called you out on it, you got defensive. That's what's actually happening here." He pointed at her. "You don't get to speak to me like that." Kelly crossed her arms. "Actually, I do, because this is my show. And on my show, we treat people with respect. All people. That includes our guests and our crew and our audience. And if you can't do that, then maybe you shouldn't be here." The audience was silent now, watching the confrontation unfold like a car crash they could not look away from. Prince Harry's face was flushed. His hands were clenched at his sides. "Are you asking me to leave?" Kelly met his gaze without flinching. "I'm saying that if you can't have a respectful conversation, then yes, maybe it's best if we end this interview." "Unbelievable," he muttered. "Absolutely unbelievable. Do you know who I am?" Kelly's expression hardened. "Yes, I do. You're a guest on my show who's behaving badly, and I've had enough." Prince Harry looked around the studio as if waiting for someone to intervene on his behalf, but the crew just stared. The audience sat frozen. Nobody was coming to his rescue. He turned back to Kelly with a sneer. "This is exactly the kind of treatment I've been talking about. This is why I left the UK, because people like you think they can treat me however they want." Kelly shook her head. "No, you left the UK for your own reasons, and that's fine. But you don't get to use that as an excuse for acting entitled. I've been nothing but kind to you from the moment you walked out here. I asked you about your work. I complimented your courage, and you responded by insulting me and my show. So don't stand there and act like you're being mistreated when you're the one who created this situation." He took a step toward her, his voice low and menacing. "You have no idea what you're talking about." Kelly did not back down. "Then enlighten me. Have an actual conversation instead of throwing a tantrum because someone finally pushed back." Prince Harry's mouth opened and closed. He seemed genuinely at a loss for words. For someone who had spent years doing interviews and public appearances, he appeared completely unprepared for this moment. He looked at the cameras, then back at Kelly. "This is going to make you look terrible. You know, people are going to see this and think you attacked me." Kelly smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "People are going to see this and make up their own minds. That's how it works. But I'll sleep just fine tonight knowing I stood up for myself and my team." The prince let out a harsh laugh. "Your team, right? These people who are just here for a paycheck." That was the final straw. Kelly's voice turned ice cold. "Get out." "What?" "You heard me. Get out of my studio. This interview is over." Prince Harry looked shocked. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. You just insulted every single person who works on this show. People who wake up early and stay late to make this happen. People who care about what they do. And I'm not going to stand here and let you disrespect them. So yes, I'm asking you to leave. Now!" The audience began to clap, slowly at first, then building into thunderous applause. Prince Harry looked around in disbelief. He had come here expecting adoration and got rejection instead. He shook his head and ripped off his microphone, tossing it onto the chair. "This is outrageous. You're gonna regret this." Kelly stood tall, her arms still crossed. "The only thing I regret is wasting our time on someone who clearly has no interest in being here. Goodbye." He stormed toward the exit, his face crimson with anger and embarrassment. The cameras followed him as he pushed through the backstage door and disappeared from view. The audience was on their feet now, cheering for Kelly. She stood in the middle of the stage, taking deep breaths and trying to process what had just happened. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest. The adrenaline was coursing through her veins. This was not how she had imagined her day going when she woke up that morning. She had been excited to meet Prince Harry. She had prepared thoughtful questions. She had wanted to give him a platform to talk about things that mattered. Instead, she had just kicked him off her show in front of millions of viewers. Her producer rushed over to check on her, his headset still on, his clipboard clutched in his hand. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly, positioning himself between Kelly and the cameras. Kelly nodded, though her hands were trembling slightly. "Yeah, I'm okay. That was intense." The producer gave her a reassuring smile. "You were amazing. Seriously, that took guts." Kelly turned to the audience and gave them a small, genuine smile. "Well, that was not how I saw this going." The audience laughed, the tension finally breaking. "I want to say something really quick. I love doing this show. I love meeting interesting people and having real conversations. But I also believe that respect goes both ways. It doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. If you come into this space, you treat people with kindness. And if you can't do that, then this isn't the place for you." The applause was deafening. Kelly wiped at her eyes, overwhelmed by the support. "Thank you all for being here today. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back with our next guest, who I promise will be much more enjoyable to talk to." The audience laughed again as the show cut to commercial. Backstage, Prince Harry was in a fury. His security team tried to calm him down, but he was having none of it. He paced back and forth in the narrow hallway, his face still flushed with anger. He demanded to speak to the executive producers. He pulled out his phone and started making calls. His voice echoed through the corridor as he ranted to whoever was on the other end. "Do you have any idea what just happened? She humiliated me on live television. This is unacceptable." One of the show's executive producers appeared, a woman in her 50s with gray hair and a calm demeanor. She had been in television for 30 years and had seen everything. She approached Prince Harry with professional courtesy. "I understand you're upset. Let's talk about this in private." She gestured toward an empty office. Prince Harry followed her, still fuming. Once inside, he whirled around to face her. "I want that footage destroyed, all of it. This cannot air. Do you understand me?" The producer folded her hands in front of her. The interview was broadcast live. It already aired. Millions of people saw it. His eyes widened. "What? You mean this was live? Nobody told me this was live." "It was in your contract and discussed during the pre-interview meeting yesterday. All of our shows are broadcast live unless otherwise specified." Prince Harry ran his hand through his hair, panic replacing some of the anger. "This is a disaster, an absolute disaster. You have to do something. Issue a statement. Say there were technical difficulties. Say Kelly was having a bad day." The producer shook her head slowly. "I'm not going to do that. What happened out there happened. Kelly responded to the situation as she saw fit, and frankly, I support her decision." "You support her?" He looked incredulous. "She kicked me off her show." "You insulted her, her show, and her staff. What did you expect her to do? Just sit there and take it?" The producer's voice remained calm but firm. "Look, I understand this is embarrassing for you, but you created this situation, not Kelly." Prince Harry's jaw clenched. "This is going to ruin everything. My reputation, my work, everything I've built." The producer softened slightly. "Or it could be a learning experience. Nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes. How you respond to this will matter more than what happened." But Prince Harry was not interested in learning experiences or taking responsibility. He threatened legal action. He insisted that the footage be destroyed. He name-dropped powerful people who would be hearing about this. But the damage was done. The interview had been broadcast live. Millions of people had watched the entire confrontation unfold in real time. There was no taking it back, no editing it down, no spinning it into something else. It was out there for the world to see, and it was already spreading across social media like wildfire. Kelly sat in her dressing room during the commercial break, her hands shaking slightly from the adrenaline. She could still hear the applause from the audience ringing in her ears. Her makeup artist touched up her face while her assistant brought her water. The assistant, a young woman named Sarah who had been with the show for 2 years, looked at Kelly with concern and admiration. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked softly, setting the water bottle on the table. Kelly took a sip, letting the cool liquid calm her nerves. Yeah, I'm okay. I can't believe that actually happened." "Did that really just happen?" Sarah nodded vigorously. "It really happened, and you were incredible. Everyone backstage is talking about it. The crew is on your side completely." Kelly let out a nervous laugh. "I hope so. I didn't want to make a scene. I really didn't, but I couldn't let him talk to us like that." She looked at her reflection in the mirror, barely recognizing the fierce expression that had been on her face just moments ago. She was usually so careful to keep things light, to make everyone comfortable, to avoid conflict. But something in her had snapped when Prince Harry insulted her team. These were people she saw every day. People who worked hard and cared about their jobs. Good people who deserved respect. Her producer knocked on the door and stepped inside, his face beaming with a mixture of relief and excitement. "That was incredible. You handled that perfectly." Kelly let out another shaky laugh. "It didn't feel perfect. It felt like a disaster. I feel like I'm going to throw up." "It wasn't. You stood your ground. You defended your team. You did exactly what you should have done." The producer pulled up a chair and sat down next to her. "I've been in this business for 20 years, and I've never seen a host handle a situation like that with so much grace and strength. You could have screamed at him. You could have been petty or mean, but you weren't. You were firm and fair, and you gave him every chance to turn it around. He's the one who chose to make it worse." Kelly's eyes filled with tears, though she fought to keep them from falling. "I didn't want to kick him off the show. I really didn't. I just wanted to have a nice conversation, but he was so rude, so condescending, and when he insulted our crew, I couldn't let that slide. These people are like family to me, and you shouldn't have. That's what makes you a good host and a good person. You protect your people." The producer squeezed her shoulder gently. "The network is already getting calls. People are praising you. They're saying you did the right thing. Social media is exploding. People are sharing clips of you standing up to him. You're trending worldwide right now." Kelly closed her eyes for a moment, trying to process this information. "Trending? Already?" The producer nodded. "Already. This is the fastest I've ever seen anything go viral. People are calling you a hero. They're saying you represented everyone who's ever been talked down to by someone who thinks they're better than everyone else." Kelly opened her eyes and looked at her producer. "I don't feel like a hero. I feel like I just had the worst interview of my career." The producer smiled warmly. "The best interviews are the ones where real things happen, where people drop the mask and show who they really are. That's what people connect with. And today, you showed everyone exactly who you are. Someone with integrity, someone who won't be pushed around, someone worth respecting." Sarah handed Kelly a tissue as a single tear rolled down her cheek. Kelly dabbed at it carefully, mindful of her makeup. "Thank you, both of you, for having my back." The producer checked his watch. "We need to get you back out there in 2 minutes. Are you ready?" Kelly took a deep breath and stood up, smoothing down. Her dress. She checked her reflection one more time and put on a smile. It was shaky at first, but it grew stronger as she thought about her audience waiting for her. They had supported her. They had cheered for her. They deserved the rest of the show she had promised them. "Yeah, let's do this." She walked back onto the stage to roaring applause. The standing ovation seemed to last forever. People were on their feet, clapping and cheering and whistling. Some were even crying. Kelly felt her own emotions surge again, but she pushed them down. She had a show to finish. She waved to the audience and took her seat, waiting for the applause to die down. When it finally did, she spoke directly to the camera, her voice steady and sincere. "Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I have to be honest with you all, my heart is still racing. That was one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do on this show. But I meant what I said. Respect has to go both ways, and I will always stand up for the amazing people who work on this show because they deserve it." The audience applauded again. Kelly smiled and continued. "Now, we have an amazing guest coming up next who I'm really excited to talk to. So let's all take a deep breath together and get back to what we do best, which is having great conversations with interesting people. Sound good?" The audience cheered in agreement. The rest of the show went smoothly. Her next guest was warm and funny and everything the first interview should have been. They laughed together. They told stories. They connected in the way that Kelly had hoped to connect with Prince Harry. The audience loved it, but everyone knew that the Prince Harry confrontation was what people would remember. It was what they would talk about. It was what would be replayed over and over again on social media and news programs. It was the moment that would define this episode, this week, maybe even this entire season of the show. In those 32 seconds when Kelly first confronted him, everything changed. It was the moment when she said, "Actually, that's not how this show works." Those 8 words shifted the entire dynamic of the interview. Up until that point, Prince Harry had controlled the conversation. He had set the tone. He had dictated the terms. But in that instant, Kelly took back her power. She reclaimed her space. She drew a line that he had already crossed and made it clear he would not be allowed to cross it again. The friendly interview atmosphere evaporated in that 32-second window. The carefully planned questions were abandoned. The script went out the window, and what replaced it was raw, unscripted reality. It was a collision between someone who expected deference and someone who refused to give it, between entitlement and self-respect, between a guest who thought he was above criticism and a host who proved he was not. In those 32 seconds, Kelly made a choice. She could have let his comment slide. She could have laughed it off. She could have changed the subject and tried to salvage the interview, but she did not. She chose authenticity over politeness. She chose truth over comfort. And that choice changed everything. Kelly had built her career on being genuine. She had risen from a small-town girl who won a singing competition to one of the most beloved hosts on television. She did it by being herself, by being the kind of person you could trust, to be honest and kind and real. She never tried to be someone she was not. She never put on airs or pretended to be more sophisticated than she was. She was relatable. She was warm. She was the friend you wished you had. And in that moment, she proved that being kind does not mean being a doormat, that being respectful does not mean accepting disrespect in return. She showed her audience that you can stand up for yourself without losing your composure, that you can be firm without being cruel, that you can set boundaries without apologizing for them. That strength and kindness are not opposites. They can coexist in the same person, in the same moment, in the same act of standing your ground. The prince, on the other hand, revealed something else entirely. He showed that all his talk about wanting privacy and peace was contradicted by his constant presence in the media. Every few months, there he was, doing another interview, releasing another statement, making another appearance. He talked about being hounded by the press while simultaneously courting the press. He complained about being in the spotlight while doing everything possible to stay in the spotlight. That his complaints about being judged rang hollow when he was so quick to judge others. He had judged Kelly's show as superficial within minutes of arriving. He had judged the entertainment industry. He had judged the audience. He had judged everyone except himself. That his claims of wanting to be treated like everyone else did not match his behavior when he was actually treated like everyone else. When Kelly responded to his rudeness the way she would respond to anyone's rudeness, he was shocked, offended, outraged. Because deep down, he still expected special treatment. He wanted the platform without the accountability, the attention without the scrutiny, the respect without having to give it. He wanted all the benefits of fame with none of the responsibilities that come with it. When he walked off that stage, he walked away from more than just an interview. He walked away from any pretense that his public persona matched his private behavior. The mask slipped. The carefully constructed image cracked. And what the audience saw underneath was someone who truly believed he was special. Not because of what he had done, but because of who he was born as. Someone who thought his title gave him permission to treat others as beneath him. Kelly, meanwhile, became an instant hero to millions of viewers who had watched the confrontation unfold. People who had felt disrespected by bosses or colleagues or family members and wished they had responded the way Kelly did. People who were tired of watching celebrities and public figures get away with bad behavior because of their status. The interview became a cultural touchstone. On one side stood those who believed that Kelly had been rude to a guest and should have handled the situation with more grace. On the other side stood those who celebrated her for refusing to tolerate disrespect. They pointed out that she had tried multiple times to redirect the conversation and had every right to defend herself and her team when they were being insulted. But in the studio that day, none of that mattered yet. There was no time for analysis or debate. There was only the raw reality of what had happened, a confrontation that nobody expected, a guest who pushed too far, a host who pushed back, and an audience that witnessed it all, unable to look away, holding their breath as the tension built and built until it finally exploded. Kelly finished the show that day with her head held high. She thanked her audience, hugged her crew, and went home to her family. All she knew in that moment was that she had done what felt right. The prince went home that day angry, embarrassed, and humiliated in front of millions of people. He had walked onto that stage expecting to be treated like royalty and walked off being treated like anyone else who behaves badly. That moment on stage would remain frozen in time. A perfect snapshot of what happens when entitlement meets accountability. When someone used to getting their way runs into someone who refuses to back down. When 32 seconds of television becomes a defining moment that nobody involved will ever forget, Kelly Clarkson's show continued to thrive. She proved that authenticity and integrity could coexist with success, that sometimes the best moments are the unplanned ones, where the polish falls away and what remains is just human beings reacting honestly to each other. The prince learned a hard lesson about the difference between commanding respect and earning it. He had spent years crafting an image of himself as someone who rejected the constraints of royal life. But when tested, he revealed that he still expected the deference that comes with that royal life. The confrontation lasted less than 10 minutes, but its impact would last much longer. It would be studied as an example of live television going off script. It would be remembered by everyone who watched it as the day Kelly Clarkson kicked a prince off her show and stood up for herself with grace and strength. Because that is what happens when someone refuses to be diminished. When someone chooses self-respect over people-pleasing. When someone draws a line and means it. The audience that day did not know they were about to witness television history. They thought they were going to see a pleasant interview. Instead, they saw something more valuable. They saw what it looks like to stand up for yourself with grace and strength, to set boundaries without apology, to demand respect while giving it. And they loved Kelly for it.